Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today as we discuss what's new in 2026, the key FundMatch program changes that you need to know. So looking at the agenda today, we'll just do some light housekeeping to go over how the webinar will flow. We'll do a brief intro of what is FundMatch. We'll look at the 2026 program updates. We'll look at some of the application updates. We'll do a quick wrap up, and then we'll leave hopefully about 30 minutes at the end for the Q&A session. So housekeeping today, I'm going to present about 30 minutes, and then like I said, we'll do the Q&A at the conclusion. If you can please hold all your questions until the end. You can type any questions you have along the way into the chat, and we will review them during that Q&A session. If you would like, there is the option to read your question aloud or say your question aloud. There's a request a live call-in button on your screen, and then you can raise your hand so you can enter the queue and ask your question live. Also, I wanted to mention if you have any more specific questions or don't want to say them here on the webinar, you can always follow up with your engagement executive or myself if you have any more specific questions after the webinar. And our session today will be recorded, and we will post this on our YouTube page in the coming days, and then I will also be sending a follow-up email with that link to the recording as well as the slides shown here today. And then also just wanted to shout out that we're using our new platform Riverside for our webinar. So this is the first live webinar that we're doing using this platform. So hopefully you all get accustomed to it as we are learning some of the features of it as well. With that, we will go right into a brief introduction about what is FundMatch. And I know we have a lot of returning companies on the call today, but we also have some new participants. So briefly, what is the FundMatch program? The FundMatch program assists our eligible agribusinesses and agricultural suppliers to compete internationally by providing 50% reimbursement for eligible marketing expenses and activities to promote the brands and the products of the USA. And those are two really key things of the program. So as I mentioned, those products of the USA, we have that origin statement requirement. And I pulled this chart right from our new 2026 FundMatch guide that shows you all of the eligible and ineligible US origin statements. So the US origin statement has to get incorporated into all of your activities, what we call proof of activity. And then also it has to be on all of your product labels that you are promoting through the program. The one caveat to that is that if you are doing any of our domestic trade shows, that requirement is waived for any of those domestic activities. Just shouting out some of those eligible and ineligible statements. We have product of USA, grown in USA, made in USA are all eligible, and you can sort of interchange USA, United States, America. You can also use the state name so long as it is spelled out in its entirety. So product of California, grown in Washington, made in Utah. But you can't use those state abbreviations. So it can't be product of CA, grown in OR, made in MT, etc. For our wine and spirits companies, you can use the wine of California statement, or you can use bottled by, produced in, or vinted by. And you can again use the state name as long as it's spelled out in its entirety, and you can't use those abbreviations. Looking at some of the ineligible statements, distributed by, manufactured in, handcrafted by, those are all ineligible, as well as any seals or logos or just the American flag on its own without the statement, or any USA Pavilion signage if you're at a trade show. That alone does not suffice. If you have the address on your label, again, that alone does not suffice. And then if you have any reference to geographic location in the name of your product, the brand name, that does not suffice as well. It has to be separate from the name of your product. So do you qualify for FundMatch? So companies can participate in WSDOTA's FundMatch program if they are headquartered in our Western US region, if they are a small to medium agribusiness, if the ingredients in their products are at least 50% US grown, and if they have been in operation for at least 1 year. Now, to provide just a brief overview of how the whole cycle of FundMatch works, ideally we want you to start with a one-on-one consultation with one of our engagement executives. This is really an opportunity for you to meet one-on-one with somebody and understand how the program works, all the requirements, the fees you're paying, and just make sure that you can be successful in the program. Then you'll submit an application. With that application comes a non-refundable application fee. If you submit for the 2026 program year between now and the end of the year, December 31st, that's only going to be $300, but come January 1st, it does become $350 for the application fee, so we encourage you to submit as soon as possible. And then once you submit, I will review the application and approve it. I may have some additional information needed, or maybe some of your product labels need additional information, etc. But once it does get approved, I then send a contract for you and your company to sign electronically. And then there's also a 6% administration fee, and that is based upon the total amount of funding that we will be providing to you in reimbursement. Once those are complete, you go and conduct your activities, you compile all the documents along the way, and then once all of your activities are done, you submit your claim. And we have our FundMatch claims coordinators review those claims. Again, if you're missing any documents we need to approve the claim, they'll reach out at that point. And then once it's approved, we disperse those funds and that reimbursement to the company. So that's just a really brief overview of what is FundMatch, but today we're going to talk about what's new for 2026. So the first program update that we've made is that media and press releases are now an eligible expense type. So this includes the production and distribution of press releases, press kits, and other materials and information that is directed at any foreign media, trade, or consumers to really promote your brand. Again, whatever you distribute or produce has to promote your approved brands in your application, and of course include that eligible U.S. origin statement. The next item that we've updated for 26 is that companies will now have 30 days to complete that contract and 6% administrative invoice that I talked about a little while ago. So you'll have 30 days to complete both of those. If they don't get completed within that 30-day window, we will close out your application and then put whatever funding we've initially reserved for you back into our pot for all of our companies. This really helps us to ensure the funding that we have set aside is confirmed to be used. Unfortunately, we've had some instances where those contracts or invoices don't get paid right away, and months go by, and unfortunately we don't have an opportunity to reallocate that funding. So we really want to make sure it gets used, but however, if the application does get closed, it doesn't mean you can't participate. You still can. We can reopen it, reissue the contract and invoice, but just know that that funding is on a first come, first served basis. So if we send that to you in January, we close it out because it wasn't completed after 30 days and you want to pick it back up in November, we might not have all the funding that you're looking to have at that point in the year. So please make sure that gets done within those 30 days so we can make sure everything is moving along. The next item that's new in 2026 is we are now allowing flexible product amendments. So this means that you can add products to your application after your activities have been completed. For example, if you go to a trade show, you have 5 new products that you didn't include in your initial application submission, you didn't have time to get them in and approved before the trade show, you can now do so once you come back from the trade show. And you can complete those before or during your process of submitting your claim. So that way you avoid any proration on your claim for any unapproved products. Just a reminder as well, though, all your products still have to meet our program requirements of having at least 50% U.S. grown ingredients. And of course, you need that U.S. origin statement on your labels if you're marketing it in an international market. The next new item for 2026 is that we are no longer going to offer direct reimbursements to our FundMatch companies' in-country partners. So this means that if you're working with an in-country partner, you will first have to reimburse them for any expenses that in-country partner incurred for marketing your products, and then we will reimburse you directly. So we won't deal with those in-country partners directly anymore. We'll just deal with the FundMatch participant when it comes to reimbursements. The next new item is that for trade shows, we're no longer requiring exhibitor guides to be required as part of the documentation that you have to submit to us for claims. We're going to instead confirm your participation by things that have already been required. So just by that invoice that you receive from the official show organizer, or if you're purchasing booth space through a cooperator or an SRTG like USADA, that invoice from them suffices as well, as long as it shows the name of the trade show in the year, and then also the booth photos confirming your participation as well. So this is just one last piece of documentation that our companies need to provide. Next, this deals with late claim submissions. So as you all know, we have a requirement that all claims be submitted within 60 days after activity completion. So now any claims that do get submitted post that 60-day deadline, we will place into a late claim submission status. And at that point, we will hold on to those claims until the end of the program year. And if we still have funds remaining, we will consider paying out that claim. But if not, there will be an opportunity to potentially refund your 6% admin fee if you didn't end up using the funds we initially allocated to you at the beginning of the year. So please make sure you're submitting those claims within 60 days, or just be communicative with your engagement executive or myself if that deadline is not feeling obtainable, and we can work it out. Next, we have that monthly photos are no longer required. So for things such as in-store demonstrations or displays, advertisements like billboards, etc., if you're doing these for periods of multiple months within the year, we only need one photo to show that that actually occurred, instead of requiring, over the course of a 6 months period, one photo of the same exact billboard, for example. So we just need that one photo. We do, however, need an agreement or a contractor invoice that states the length of period that you are paying for that rented demo or display or advertisement, so that we can confirm it was there for that total period of time. And then lastly, we've moved up our date for our end of year survey to be due now at the end of February. So this again is that mandatory survey that our FundMatch participants have to complete at the end of each year, and you'll report results from the activities you did through FundMatch. This is a requirement through FAS that shows them how successfully we've spent our money and how much it's helped our participants. So we've moved that deadline up to end of February, so you'll have 2 months after the end of the year to complete that, and gives us more time to compile it all and prepare it for our reporting. So that concludes our program updates. I'm now going to go into our updates that we've made on the application. So this is the application you'll see in your MyWUSADA account. So the first new aspect is our trade shows and outbound missions tile. This you will see under the FundMatch program tile, and then once you drop down to the specific program year, you'll now see this trade shows and outbound missions tile. And this is here for you to browse through trade shows and outbound missions that have been approved in our system thus far before starting the application process. So you'll see you have the ability to search all those that have been approved by country from that drop-down. You can also search and differentiate between a trade show and outbound mission. You can also enter any start or end dates if you're looking for a specific one. And then there's also the ability to filter if it has a USA pavilion or it's been USDA endorsed. And then also we've included at the top there some a great resource for companies who are going on trade shows or outbound missions. This is a checklist that tells you everything you need to know before you go and then once you return. So just a short checklist that's kind of condensed some of the information that's in our FundMatch guide, so you know what you need to do to prepare before and after, so you receive your full reimbursement. In the actual application itself, one small update on the company info section. We've added this one question just about what your preferred payment method is for reimbursement, if that's through ACH or through check. This again just helps us get ahead of if you want to be paid through ACH, then and we don't already have your ACH information, we'll have to reach out at that point and get it from you so that when you do submit a claim, we can fast track that payment process. One small update on the product info section of the application. So we've added these two columns to this chart with all of your products. So you'll see the US market approved column. This is essentially just differentiating between products that do and don't have that US origin statement on the labels already. So if companies are only applying for the domestic market to attend domestic trade shows that are pre-approved, they don't need to have that US origin statement on their labels. So this just helps us differentiate because if you initially get your application approved for just that domestic marketing plan, but then 6 months down the line you want to add an international market to your plan, we can now know which products need to have now that eligible US origin statement or which ones wouldn't qualify to be promoted in that international market. And then secondly, we have that strip label / sticker column there. We do offer that companies who have products that don't already have a valid US origin statement on their products, a temporary solution for that is to add a strip label or sticker to their product with that origin statement on. But that's meant to be a temporary solution. We usually grant a 1-year period to then get that incorporated into your label. So we'll now begin to track that and we'll give companies notice and everything to get that now incorporated into your labels. And now where we've made the biggest updates is our marketing plan section, which you may have seen a preview of that video we had recorded, and as of today is now fully live for companies to complete. So when you go into the marketing plan section, this is the first thing you'll see, which is the past budget and participation history dashboard. So it will show you the past 3 years of your company's FundMatch participation and the rate at which you utilized the funding we provided. So you'll see the reimbursed amount and the approved funding amount. You'll also see underneath that unused funding amount, and then underneath that the ineligible claims amount. So this is showing the 50% we would have reimbursed for any claims that were deemed ineligible. So if you submitted a claim for $5,000 in expenses and it was deemed complete ineligible, perhaps due to not having a US origin statement, we would have only reimbursed $2,500 of that. So that's the number you would see there, not the full $5,000. You can also filter this by country if that interests you. Instead of just seeing the whole program year, you can then filter by country as well. And then right below that dashboard is where you'll see your marketing plans and where you can add your marketing plans. So in this case, I already had Japan added, so you can see that's the one I have currently, and then you have the button to add more marketing plans. One thing to note, we did add this 6% administration fee column as well. So it's calculating exactly how much you would pay in your 6% admin invoice for that particular market. So that way it's not a surprise when you get that invoice. You can calculate here and sort of plan a little bit better. So if you were to select that Add Marketing Plan button, it would take you to this page, and here you would select the country you would like to add from the dropdown, and then it would take you to this page. So we've separated out what we're calling trade events, so the trade shows and outbound missions, from the other eligible marketing expenses. So first we'll look at the trade shows and outbound missions side. So you'll select the Select an Event button. And in this case, I'm adding an Australia marketing plan, and it looks like the only trade show that has been approved so far for 26 is the Fine Food Australia show. So if I wanted to select that trade show, that's the one I was looking for, I can select it. And then it also will prompt you to select yes or no if you're exhibiting within the USA Pavilion, because that is a requirement if there is a USA Pavilion for that trade show. If you don't see the trade show that you would like to attend in Australia, you can select that sentence there that says don't see your event on the list, and that will prompt you to add a new trade event that we don't already have approved in our system. You'll enter the dates, the website, and then there's also an option to upload any documents that or you may have received, like a flyer or brochure about that trade event that you think may be helpful. We do review those and just make sure they meet our eligibility requirements before we approve them and they show up on that drop-down list. But for this instance, we're going to select Find Food Australia and add it to the marketing plan. And then you can start building out your expenses for that trade show. So right underneath, you'll hit Add Expense. And here is where you'll select the expense category. So you can either select the expenses associated with international trade shows, outbound trade missions, or international travel. So in this case, I selected the international trade show expense category, and I'm going to select booth fee. So the list you're seeing here is directly populated from the eligible expense types in our FundMatch guide as well. So these are all what you see in our guide. So I've selected booth fee here, and I've entered it's $5,000 for the booth fee. You add a little description. This is our 10 by 10 booth cost. If I wanted to keep adding expenses for this particular trade show, I could, by selecting that plus button underneath, add another expense type. And then you could start adding things for freight, for shipping samples, giveaways, your graphics, those types of things also associated with Find Food Australia. And once you've added all of your expenses, you will select Add to Marketing Plan. And then you will see it rolls up to that section up there with the total amount you've added. You can continue adding events for Australia on the trade show and outbound mission side, or you can then go ahead and start adding other marketing expenses, which we will take a look at next. So again, this dropdown includes all the other marketing expense types that you see in our FundMatch guide. In this instance, I'm selecting in-store demonstrations. And from that expense type dropdown, I'm going to select the rented demonstration stand or space. Now, one new feature is we're going to prompt you to select a month in which you are planning to conduct this in-store demonstration. We do understand that this is being completed often a year away from when you're going to complete these activities, so please provide us with your best guess of when you will be doing the activity. So I've selected April 2026, and I think for that month it's going to cost me $3,000 to rent the space in the store. So I added my description as well. It's the cost of the floor space for 1 month of in-store demos at Costco. And again, I could keep adding other expenses associated with this in-store demo for that month. In this example, I've added demonstration supplies for $100 for that month. It's for those disposable cups, napkins, plates. And again, I could keep adding if I wanted to do temporary labor or promotional materials for brochures or whatever it may be. You will have to add, if you're going to do multiple months of in-store demos, or maybe it's a billboard or whatever it is, you'll have to add it per month so we're getting an idea of what your total monthly expenses are. And once you've completed all that, again, you hit that Save to Marketing Plan button. And again, you'll see it roll up to that section with your total amount that you've requested. So once you're done adding all of the activities you're going to complete in Australia for 2026, you'll hit the next button, and it takes you to this nice international marketing summary page. You can click on each of these sections here, and they will drop down with the information, and it'll look like this. So it gives you that high-level marketing plan basics. It gives you the activity summary of all the activities you just added, and then it gives you that final summary of the budget. So once you've reviewed that, it all looks good, you'll save that marketing plan. And then again, it'll take you back to that home page with the dashboard and then the list of your current marketing plans. Once you're done adding all of your marketing plans, you'll just continue to that final review page, verify everything's correct, sign off on it, and then submit your application. So that is all I have today. I know that was a lot of new information thrown at everyone pretty fast, but we're here to help, here to guide everyone through it. A couple of tips for success. Please reach out to your engagement executives and schedule a one-on-one consultation with them. If you don't know who they are yet, you can email export@usada.org. We've broken out our engagement executives by state and territory, so every state has their own engagement executive. So that's a really great opportunity to meet with them. And then secondly, please read our 2026 FundMatch guide. It's live now on our website. You can scan that QR code and it will take you right to it, but it's also underneath the FundMatch section on our website as well. So that has everything you need to know about what's eligible and what's not, the whole process of FundMatch. Those are the two big tips for success. I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you all for joining today. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out to myself at fundmatch@usada.org or reach out directly to your engagement executive. We're here to help and support you through, and we want all our companies to be successful in getting their 50% reimbursement. With that, looks like I'm a little bit early, but more time for Q&A. We will jump into the Q&A if people have questions, and Tiffany, our marketing manager, will help facilitate some of that.
All right, we do have a few questions that have come in already. Feel free to continue dropping your questions in the chat, but we'll go through these in order. We had a question at the very start about the recording for this session. We will have that on YouTube shortly after this is concluded, and we'll email out a link to that YouTube recording after this. And then we had a question about the documents that will remind you of all these details. So as Gretchen mentioned, that FundMatch guide will be really crucial there, and I dropped a link to that as well in the chat. We have a question here about the U.S. origin statements. Can it say made in the USA and include a U.S. flag, or does that disqualify the statement?
Yeah, great question. It can also include the U.S. flag as long as it has that made in the USA statement as well. It's just the flag alone without the statement does not inherently include, make it eligible as an eligible U.S. origin statement. So it has, if you have the flag and the made in USA statement, that is a-okay. Just cannot be the flag on its own.
Great. Next question. For a trade show in another country, I understand that we need signs saying made in the USA. Do the products have to have an origin statement added as well?
Yeah, if you're at a trade show in another country, again, you have to have the origin statement incorporated somewhere in your booth, and then it does have to be on your product labels as well if you have product samples out at your booth.
Next question. How accurate do we need to be in the marketing plan application? Should we use our best estimate during the first round application, or better save until later when we have more details?
Yeah, great question. I would say we obviously understand, all of it says estimate. Try and do your due diligence to estimate as much as you can and do your research beforehand so you have good estimates. It's a fine balance, right, of you want to not request too much because then you're paying that 6% admin fee up front on money you may not end up using, but you also don't want to request too little because, if you wait too long, we might not have enough funding later in the year to give you. So I say if you submit your first round of application here now, you can always complete marketing plan amendments to add more funding to a market, say in a couple months when you know more. And we can also always move funding around to between markets. So if you requested too much in one and you wanted to add a new one, we can switch some of that over. So yeah, maybe do your best you can now and then reassess in a couple months and make sure that we can reserve that funding for you up front, but also not request too much because we don't want you to pay more than what you need to. So
our next question, when is the deadline to complete the application?
So for 2026 and all of our program years, we accept applications all throughout the program year. There really is no deadline except the program year ends December 31st. However, as I said, we really encourage applications as early as possible so you can reserve your funding. So yeah, there is no real deadline, just when the program year ends, December 31st. But you also do need to submit your application before any of your activities happen. So if you plan to go to a trade show in March, your application needs to include that trade show and have been approved before the activity. Same with any type of advertising, not just shows, but if you're doing label and packaging modifications, it needs to be approved before you start printing those. So.
All right, next question. Demo and in-store marketing support is only for activities outside the US.
Correct. Yes. So the only eligible expenses for the US will be those domestic trade shows that have been pre-approved and are on our list in our FundMatch guide. And then we also do offer seminars. Pretty much you're inviting at least 10 buyers and educating them about your product. So that's the only other eligible expense for the domestic market. So just the domestic shows that have been pre-approved and domestic seminars, which have some stipulations surrounding them as well.
Next question. Our Canadian distributor does our Canadian trade show booth fees through a deduction bill back. With the new policies, how can we document a deduction versus a payment in order to get reimbursement?
Yeah, I think we see this quite often with some companies. So we essentially just need to have the paper trail with that deduction shown. And again, we're only going to be reimbursing our FundMatch participant company, not that in-country partner. So as long as you can work it out so that we're reimbursing you and we have the paper trail to show that instead of you reimbursing them from an invoice, you are deducting it from a product order, that is totally fine. But maybe we want to connect with an engagement executive or myself just to make sure we have those details clear.
Great. Next question. How do you delineate between a trade event and promotional event if the event is consumer driven, but there's a trade component?
Yeah, good question. We did include a page in our guide this year specific to wine trade events and promotional events, but typically, the differentiation between a trade show and a promotional event is that the trade show has, qualified buyers there. It's not open generally to the general public or those consumers. So that's typically the difference there. But if you have a specific event that you're not sure about, send it my way and I can take a look at it and we can determine which category it would fall into.
Great. All right, next question. I know we touched on this, but can you clarify the statement of origin on packaging? You showed a slide at the beginning, but just want to confirm what is exactly needed for products to qualify.
I can go way back to flash that slide again, but essentially we need a valid U.S. origin statement to be present somewhere on your products. It can be any of the options we've shown here, and it doesn't have to be in bold on the front of your package. It just has to be somewhere on that label, so that it is being shown as a product that is of U.S. origin. So any of these statements would suffice. If you have a statement that you're unsure about, again, reach out to me and I can help you with that. So
great. All right, our next question. For the ineligible markets for RAP funding, is there any chance to have changes in 2027, like for Canada, Mexico, and China, including Hong Kong and Macau?
Yeah, unfortunately, those market ineligibilities are already set forth for the funding source, and we don't have the ability to change that. So we received 2 tranches of RAP funding, and each one lasts for 5 years. So we received one in 2024 and one in 2025. So in theory, we have RAP funding until 2030, but we are on track to spend it way before then. So yeah, there's no guarantees it'll last until 2020 or 2030.
Great. Yep. The second part of that question was about when RAP funding will expire. So you hit on that. Next question. Do the domestic seminars need to have buyers from outside of the US, or can it be 10 from US-based retailers?
Yeah, those buyers do have to be international buyers. Yeah, so 10 international buyers have to be present at minimum for it to qualify as a domestic seminar.
Great. Next question I have here, for product eligibility, if we outsourced manufacturing, packaging outside of the country, but ingredients are still 50% of US origin, would it still be accepted?
Yes, that is okay as long as the ingredients are grown in the US. They can be manufactured or packaged outside of the US.
Great. I think as of now, that's our last question in the chat. I'm just looking through this one more time to make sure we got everything. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in.
Well, like I said, we're always available for any other questions. Myself, we're your engagement executive. So encourage you to read the guide all the way through, and please reach out to us if you have any questions. Like I mentioned at the beginning, you, as of today, have the ability to fully submit the application. So those that started a couple weeks ago, you can now complete your marketing plans and submit them, and we'll get them processed and approved for next year.
Gretchen, we just have one more question come in. Hotel per diem changes monthly. How should we estimate?
Yeah, I will say those, they do change, but not too drastically per month. So if you want to use the most current month that we have to do those estimates, I think that's perfectly fine. I think they tend to usually go up and not down, so maybe you buffer in $5 or $10 extra per night.
And Kelsey just dropped a link in the chat for per diem, and that is from government rates, so that will hopefully be a helpful resource as well.
Yes. Yep. Thank you, Kelsey.
All right. I don't think we have any other questions.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining, and we look forward to supporting you guys in 2026.